Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Richards and I am currently a master's student in the Department of Kinesiology as well as a graduate advising assistant here in the College of Health and Human Development. We decided to create a video series on everything you may need to know about your journey to a DPT, including how to look for PT schools, how to apply for PT schools, and everything in between. So I wanted to make this quick little video just to introduce myself so you get to know a face behind the voice and get to know a little bit about my story and my journey to PT school. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first very important question that we encourage all prospective PT school applicants to ask themselves and others is why PT? So I'd like to share a little bit about why I chose the profession of physical therapy. I already knew that I had a passion for movement and for studying the human body, and I absolutely loved my time in the Cal State Fullerton Kines department. I knew as soon as I finished the program and graduated that I wanted more. I felt like I had just hit my stride and had just started learning everything that I wanted to know when suddenly I graduated and it was all over. During this time, I had also tried to intern at a few local PT clinics, and I actually thought that it wasn't for me. I really didn't like my experience very much. And it wasn't until I learned about how many different types and facets there are to physical therapy. After realizing this, I realized that I wanted to specialize in sport performance therapy, and I wanted to use my background in kinesiology, strength and conditioning, biomechanics, motor behavior, all of these things that I had learned during my program, and I wanted to learn how to rehab athletes and the general population using the same techniques. So what I did is I found a local performance therapist in my area. I told him that I wanted to take him out for a cup of coffee and ask him everything that I could ask him about the field. And he agreed to be my mentor and allowed me to come observe and learn about the field with him through hands-on, one-on-one direct patient care right alongside him. And every moment that I spent in this field and in his clinic, I felt more and more in love and decided that this was for sure the career path for me. Once I decided that this was for sure the career path for me, I had to start thinking about where I wanted to go to school because, right, this is the whole process of going to PT school to become a PT. So this is a very important decision that should not be made lightly. The first thing I did was I considered where I might want to live. I am a SoCal girl born and raised. I love the beach. I love the warm weather. So crazy winters like we've seen in the Northeast and in the North are probably not for me. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go somewhere, even if it was the best school in the country, and live there for 3 years if I was going to be miserable not being able to live there. So the next thing I did was I looked up the US News rankings of where some of the top PT school programs are. And I tried to decide which ones are in these places that I'm willing to live or I think that I could live. And then I did a deep dive into about 10 programs to look at their mission statements and values, their curriculums, their prerequisite requirements, tuition costs, etc., and determine which ones actually reflected what I wanted out of my education. Something really important to me was that I had integrity in my own values and that this was reflected in any of the schools that I wanted to go to. So I really wanted to make sure that this was going to be a program in which I could thrive, I could flourish. I'm not only taking classes and I wanted to learn information, but I wanted to make sure that this was going to be somewhere that I would be supported and I would actually be able to learn how to be a great practitioner, not just get a very expensive piece of paper on the wall. After I looked into these programs, I narrowed a pool of 5 to 6 schools and made a spreadsheet on Excel to compare the prerequisite requirements side by side and to keep track of my progress in each. So as you'll see in our DPT series that there are quite a few prerequisite requirements that almost all schools tend to share. So I wanted to make a spreadsheet where I could see each school exactly what they required and how far along I was in my progress to know exactly what I had to do in order to make sure that I had all of the requirements for any of the schools that I applied to. Once it came time, I eventually applied to 2 schools through the PTCIS down from my pool of 5 to 6, which ended up being Duke University and the University of Colorado. And spoiler alert, as you can see from my sweatshirt, I chose Colorado. So one thing that many people ask is what the timeline looks like for the DPT process, for application, for doing all these classes, etc. So for my timeline, I graduated in 2018 from Cal State Fullerton after transferring from a different Cal State my junior year. I decided to go on a study abroad at the conclusion of my senior year just after graduation. And while I was on my study abroad to Costa Rica with the department, I decided to return to Cal State Fullerton and pursue my master's of kinesiology for both motor behavior and biomechanics. I want to really make it clear that I just kind of did this for quote unquote fun. I really, really loved the fields of motor behavior and biomechanics. I knew that they were something that deeply interested me, that I wanted to learn more about, and that I knew would make me a better practitioner once I did become a physical therapist. And so this was something that I chose because I wanted to not only further my education in these fields, but I wanted to be able to conduct and participate in research. I wanted to get some teaching experience as a TA. I wanted to make better relationships with faculty members so that I had better letters of recommendation when the time came. And lastly, having a master's degree would just be another thing to help set me apart from other applicants. But I do want to note that having a master's degree is absolutely not necessary to be competitive. This is just the path that I chose for myself. So do not think that, you graduate with your bachelor's and now you need to go get a master's. Completely unnecessary. This is just what I chose for myself because that was the path I wanted to take. And I thought that for my journey, this is what would best support me and my goals. Because I made this decision during the summertime after I graduated, it was too late to apply for the master's program for the upcoming fall. So I decided instead to take a gap year, work on some prerequisite classes, get some more observation hours, and really kind of get a lot of that grunt work done during the year between my graduation and when I started the master's program, which was fall 2019. So I was able to complete many of my prerequisites through my kinesiology bachelor's as well as my master's, and any of the remaining courses that I needed I actually did through an online program through the University of New England, which were self-taught and self-paced, and were very convenient, especially during the pandemic, that I didn't have to go anywhere or do any hands-on labs, etc. But that's for a different day, and I explain that a little bit later in the series. As for my actual PT application, I applied to PT school halfway through my master's program, which was July 2020. I conducted my interviews in late November 2020, give or take, depending on the school. I was invited to interview at both of the schools that I applied to, and completed those, like I said, late November. And then I was officially accepted and accepted my position at the University of Colorado on January 15th. Now, it's no secret that getting into PT school is notoriously difficult with very stringent acceptance rates from most schools across the country. So with that, I wanted to give you an idea of what it truly takes to be successful in applying and being accepted to the PT school of your choice. And with that, I wanted to share some of my statistics as I applied to the University of Colorado, where I'm going to go. As I mentioned, I graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 2018 with my bachelor's in kinesiology. My concentration was clinical movement science, and I graduated magna cum laude that summer. I am currently finishing my master's in kinesiology, again with a focus in motor behavior and biomechanics. I will finish that in just about a month or two and graduate in May of 2021. My overall application GPA was 3.89. My science GPA, which is specific to the science classes that you need to take, was 3.71. My prerequisite GPA, including all of the prerequisite classes that are needed for each respective school, was 3.84. And my GRE test scores were 159 for verbal, which was 83rd percentile for my cohort, 155 for quantitative, which was the 56th percentile, and 5.0 for analytical, which was the 93rd percentile. So during the last year of my bachelor's, during my gap year, and into my first semester of my master's degree, I was actually employed as a medical scribe at an orthopedic surgery office near Cal State Fullerton. So I had 3,200 hours of employment in the orthopedics realm. And then once I found my physical therapist mentor who agreed to work with me, I had about 1,500 hours of outpatient observation, and I had 50 hours of inpatient observation in a local nursing home with both a physical therapist and an occupational therapist in order to get some breadth and some differential experiences within the field. Some other extracurriculars that I had in my pocket were that I was a lab assistant in the motor behavior lab for 3 years, which would have been 4 other than the pandemic, but I was able to do that for my senior year of my bachelor's, still during my gap year, while I also worked as a research assistant to my now current advisor and the director of the motor lab, and into my master's program as well. I was able to not only help my advisor with research, but I was able to conduct my own research for my thesis for my master's program. I had probably more than 15,000 hours of volunteer community service over the last few years. I work with local nonprofits in the area in OC and LA that I'm very passionate about, that I've done for years. So I accrued quite a bit of time in that. As I mentioned, I'm also a graduate advising assistant in the Department of Kinesiology here with Julia and Sarah. And lastly, I was also a teaching associate in the Department of Kinesiology, teaching undergrad physical performance classes. Some other highlights of my application were that I took 2 study abroad trips with the Department of Kinesiology here at CSUF. The first I did the summer of my junior year on the trip to Greece, and the second was the trip to Costa Rica, which normally goes to Brazil. And I was very, very fortunate to be able to have partaken in both of those, which were very, very enriching and gave me a lot to talk about during my interview process. So not only is it a wonderful experience while you're in the department, but it's also a great talking point for any sort of interview. Another thing that I was able to do is participation in a year-long clinical strength coach mentorship. So this is created by a world-renowned physical therapist as well as his business partner who is an athletic trainer. And they treat and do performance therapy on some of the world's best athletes, including martial artists, including baseball players, football players, anybody that you can imagine. And they really do a great job of explaining how to bridge what we study in kinesiology, the strength and conditioning, biomechanics, physiology, etc., combined with the practical modalities of rehab and how to keep people strong and healthy. So I've been very fortunate to learn from them. I also have a few certifications under my belt. So I am a certified medical assistant through my medical scribe job. I have my CPR and basic life support certification, as well as a certified pain-free performance specialist, the PPSC. Lastly, I was able to get 3 letters of recommendation, which were required for both of the programs I attended, or both of the programs to which I applied. The first being the professor / my graduate advisor that I've worked with closely for 4 or 5 years now, who knows me very, very well. He was one of the people on the study abroad to Costa Rica that helped convince me to do the master's program. And he has been an invaluable resource. So again, get to know your professors. They're really cool and they really help you out a lot. The second letter was through an orthopedic surgeon that I'd worked with at my medical scribe job. So again, I worked with him for about 18 months before the pandemic. And he was able to write me a letter of recommendation as a supervisor and as an MD. And the last letter that I got was from my licensed PT / mentor whom I worked with for those 1,500 hours of observation. So there's a little bit about my story, about my journey to PT school, and I will be starting at the University of Colorado this summer. So if this is something that you are thinking is the right path for you, I wish you the best of luck, and I hope that our video series helps you out.